Mr. Brock, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your attendance today. This is a very important and a serious issue for not only Canadians but the public service. And I want to start by just looking at some legal principles here. Like every Canadian, and that includes public service employees, have an absolute right under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to be secure against unreasonable search and seizure pursuant to Section 8. And although you've testified, sir, that in some cases legal authorization was obtained, you can't say for certain in all cases authorization was obtained, and that raises the charter considerations. And a breach of a Section 8 right is a serious violation that quite often, hearkening back to my years as a Crown prosecutor, was not met with success. There are strict consequences for the privacy rights of Canadians as upheld by courts across this country. So when I take a look, and the backdrop was important for me to frame this question, when I take a look at the 13 institutions that were identified, and there's no guarantee that these are the only 13 institutions that have been using this technology. Is that a fair assessment, sir?
That's fair.
Yes, because these are the institutions that were identified by the CBC reporter, correct? So when I take a look at this list, I might give some consideration to Fisheries and Oceans Canada, perhaps the Competition Bureau, but I take a look at Canada Revenue Agency, Global Affairs, Correction Services, Canada Border Services Agency, National Defence, and most importantly, the RCMP, who all have great legal teams working behind themselves, and in many cases it's the Department of Justice, who would certainly instruct not only management of those departments but its employees about the protection of privacy rights. And to learn then, in many instances, judicial authorization was not authorized, that a PIA was not submitted for your consideration, and data was collected. That raises serious privacy concerns. You mentioned earlier, sir, I think it was in your opening statement, that in many cases, when this device was used on public sector employees, that it was with the consent with the device owner. But you can't say in all cases the extraction of data pursuant to this software already had the consent of the device holder. Is that fair to say, sir?
That's fair. I don't know that for certain.
Right, which again raises more privacy breaches. Now, the RCMP said after the fact that they submitted a PIA, I believe in December, correct? And some organizations said they submitted it perhaps earlier. But can you tell us whether or not you have consulted with these departments who have not submitted the PIAs and asked them specifically why they circumvented the Treasury Board directive in these circumstances?
So we reached out to all 13 organizations, and as I indicated at the outset, 3 of them indicated that they have done a PIA on their program. The remaining ones have not, and we're going to be reaching out to all of them. We're going to continue that exchange to follow up and say, okay, we want to understand when this is going to be done, why it wasn't done, and make sure that it's done in the way that it needs to be done. Okay. But we don't have legal authority to compel that if there's no agreement.
Right. But that is something that could be enhanced with an amendment to the Privacy Act, correct?
That's right. That's what I'm recommending.
Yes. And as the Privacy Act is constructed, again, not surprising, there are no legal consequences or any penalties for non-compliance with the PIA requirements. Is that fair, sir?
Well, that's fair, and my office, I don't have order-making powers. Even for things that are in the Privacy Act, I can do an investigation and make a finding, but I have to rely on the government or the institution complying with that.
And that is something that perhaps you would recommend for a possible amendment as well, sir?
I would certainly. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Merci, Monsieur Dufresne.